Okay, so as you may or may not know, IRL, I am moving. I am selling my place and kind of at the moment trying to get the floors done before I get out of here. And that has proven to be something of a challenge. So I've been pre-recording a lot of episodes and putting them up, and occasionally just dipping into Reddit here and there to make sure I'm not missing anything. And I guess I missed something because I get this message like, "Hey, how about that Santok Yai?" And I'm like, "Santok Yai? What the hell is a Santok Yai?" And then I looked it up because I mean, I couldn't have missed anything, could I? Oh. So I think the way we're going to do this episode, because like I pulled out my Vanguard footage here because they're talking about the Vanguard so much on Reverse the Verse, I kind of went, oh man, this is so much to deal with just in the Vanguard alone, and you know some of the changes that are going on there. Just a small preview and a hint if you haven't already seen it. If you own the Harbinger, you may be going from 3 torpedoes to possibly 5 or 6. Same size, but you know what? We'll break that down over the Piracy Show next week because we got to talk about this other ship, the Santok Yai. Now, I know I'm probably completely butchering the pronunciation, so pardon me for that. What do I think? Immediately, you know, we can talk about the visual stuff. I like it. I really, really like it. This is bold. This is different. I mean, this is even taking the Xi'an, you know, style and kind of changing it up a little, making it a little bit more interesting. I look at this thing and I kind of see the original promise that was in the Xi'an Scout. I see a lot of potential here. Now, the first thing that I noticed, I looked it up and I went, okay, let's check out the weapons. And yeah, it's got missiles and it's got quad size 3 guns. Finally, it's a Xi'an, it's a Xi'an, it's a Xenon, whatever. It's a Xenon ship with firepower, real firepower. At the first look, what it made me think of was the Zentradi scout ship from Robotech. It's actually Macross. Robotech is only the bastardized version of the original Japanese show. How dare you? Yeah, whatever. I was a Robotech guy when I was a kid. And this, you know, it's not a copy. It's not a lift, but it seems to have a little bit of that spirit in it. And I don't know. You know, maybe that's deliberate. Maybe it isn't. I'm going to assume that it isn't. But there's nothing here that would say, oh, they totally copied it or anything like that. But it's got a little bit of that personality, and so that kind of tickles my giblets a little bit. And I was like, ooh, this is a really nice ship. I really like that. Now, before we really get into the meat and potatoes of this fighter, I have to say that I am so glad that this is not another human ship. I love the fact that this is an alien ship, and to me, this has been a well that CIG has not dipped into nearly enough. The lack of, you know, alien ships, accessible alien ships. Let me, you know, kind of drop that word in there because, you know, there are the Vanduul fighters. Some, you know, some of them really cool and some of them such as they are. The lack of alien ships. I mean, the Prowler was a nice addition, but, you know, I've discussed the Prowler in the past. But something accessible, something realistic, something fun looking, and something new and bold and styling and different is something, you know, there's, to a certain degree, when CIG creates ships, like, you know, once again, we're looking at the Vanguard here, or the interior of the Vanguard, you know, they always try to do this shape language and this design language where it's like, you know, oh, you can tell that's an Aegis ship. You can tell that's a Drake ship. You can tell that's an Anvil ship, yada, yada, yada. You get my point. But the problem is everything starts to look really samey and really kind of boring. And it's very rare that within a manufacturer, you actually see a ship that kind of steps outside of those bounds and does something different and does something bold. And I think in Aegis's case, it resulted in something that looked completely amazing and original in the Reclaimer, which is, I would honestly say, one of the most gorgeous ships, though it's obviously not intended to be, one of the most gorgeous ships that CIG ever designed, because it was just such a departure from the rest of the Aegis line, which, I mean, to be frank, I think that kind of negatively impacts those ships, and it kind of gives them almost a blandness to them when they relate to each other a little too much in appearance. They almost get a little too close, and it almost, it makes them a little bit more bland than they would be on their own without the rest of the ships there to sit next to them and make everything kind of look the same. But once again, this is the ship that we're talking about, and though it does have some of the same notes as the Xeon Scout, obviously it is a departure, the Xenon Scout or whatever, the Cartual. I like it. I really, really like it. It's enough of a departure. It's obviously a completely different color. But it's not just that. I like the way it looks. I like the fact that it comes with a little bit more punch. One of the things, when we would talk about the Xeon Scout and you'd say it's kind of undergunned. It was originally supposed to be a lot more heavily armed because it didn't have missiles, and then there was a talk about maybe some other weapon system on it, or maybe upping the guns. But, the comeback to that, the counter argument to that was always, well, it's just a scout fighter, which kind of intrigued me and kind of said, well, I want to see the fighter. Now, clearly, we're getting the fighter because this is probably something that's going to appear in some chapter of Squadron 42. And so that's got a lot of, why not make money off of something that you're already going to put in the game, right? And, I totally get it. I really do. And I like this. I feel that this kind of maybe will fulfill the promise of the original Cartual or Xenon Scout. I'm just going to keep mispronouncing it now because I know it's going to trigger people. So yeah, the Xenon Scout is, it kind of held a little bit of promise, and this seems to be the fulfillment of that promise. I mean, obviously, the firepower that this thing packs is easily over double what the original Scout did punch, and this kind of fulfills that question of, okay, if that's the Scout, then what's the actual fighter? Well, here it is. I like it. I really, really like it. There is one suggestion that I would like to make. So CIG, anybody, if you are watching this episode, one thing, if you're a ship designer, let me just say this. The ships that you guys have put out in 2018 are almost entirely better than every ship that you've put out since. And I've remarked about this over the year and lamented this, is that the only thing that I don't like about these ships that you guys have brought out in 2018 is that you brought them out in 2018, because, man, I wish these ships had been in since the beginning. They are so much better than the original ships, not only just in basic appearance, but in functionality. I mean, obviously your understanding of how the game is going to work has evolved, and the ships have evolved along with that. And so, you can't really just circumvent that process and just make the ships suitable for the end game years later that it's going to be. But man, you guys have really knocked it out of the park. But if I could make one small suggestion, if I could be so bold as to make one small suggestion with this fighter, it would be this. This component rack, which extends out underneath the cockpit, which, by the way, awesome design, by the way, fantastic, nothing wrong with it. If you were to take the section that is just below the cockpit, wait, let me put a little arrow up there. All right, that little space in there, just if you can open that up just a little bit, not to make an actual cargo space, but just maybe a little bin that you could stick maybe a little tiny ship component or something that you might have to retrieve from a mission into, or a tool, or a gun, or, you know, just one of those little mission crates that you pick up, or, you know, the black box or something like that. Something that I think would add a lot of depth and a lot of utility with the ship without creating an actual cargo space that you can go to a trade panel and say, oh, put Widow in there, or put, you know, helium or hydrogen or whatever in there. Not an actual discrete cargo space, but one of these different cargo spaces like the ones that carry vehicles in the Valkyrie. Or, you know, not specifically that, but just something that you can put a few utility items in, just even like a little toolbox or something like that. It would add playability and add depth to the fighter. And certainly there are fighters out there in the universe that their utility in the Star Citizen universe suffers because they lack just a little tiny little cubbyhole to stick a mission objective crate, something like that, into. And maybe something as small as a circuit board, but just allow for a little bit of space to stick something like that in there would give ships like this a broader reach in the Star Citizen universe. Something to think about, something to consider. I'm sure there'll be people who argue against it, but I think it would be a good idea. But, you know, it's up to you. I'll just make videos about it if you don't do it. Just FYI. So, final thoughts time. The new flight engine promises to give ships that have that 6 degrees of freedom focus, like this ship here, a little bit more of a lease on life, and this certainly does, I think, fulfill the promise of the original Car2All, or what we were hoping the original Car2All was going to be. I like it. It's bold, it's different, it's exotic, like a lot of alien ships, though the pricing is not exorbitant and punishing. I think this is a better example of how to do an alien ship, and it very much reflects this 2018 that we've had, where we have just been getting solid improvements and better ships almost all around. Like every ship that we've gotten this year, the one striking thing that I've noticed about all of them is that they are so much better than the ships that came before them. And, you know, I hope that this is something that's in Squadron 42, because I would definitely like to see this flyable sooner rather than later. And obviously the loaner for this is going to be the Car2All, because anything else would be insanity. Absolute insanity. Anyways, that's the show for today. I've got plenty of more show to do for Monday now, because I got to move all that reverse the verse stuff onto Monday's show. I hope you guys enjoyed it. See you Monday.
Thank you for watching. So if you want to keep up with the latest and greatest in Star Citizen and Squadron 42's development, please follow us on our social media channels. See you soon.